Hi everybody, it's Mr. Garin and this is another web lesson. This is a review of the Articles of Confederation and the Constitutional Convention. You'll be familiar with this as a painting that we've looked at in class of the Constitutional Convention of 1787. But remember, the colonists declared independence in 1776. So that's 11 years that we have to think about. What was the country like for those 11 years? The first constitution that they created was called the Articles of Confederation, and as we learned in class, it did not last long. The Articles of Confederation was definitely a failure in government. Some of the concerns that the colonists had were they did not want to make a government that was too strong. They were scared about what the king had done to them before. They were scared how they were taxed. They were scared how rights were taken away from them. They were concerned that they wouldn't be involved in the government as it was with England. So when they're creating this new government, they're setting up many protections for themselves so it doesn't look like England and it doesn't look like the government the king had. So in many ways, the Articles of Confederation set up a government which is opposite of the system the colonists had under the king. And we look at the way the original 13 colonies or the original 13 states are set up. Under the Articles of Confederation, they want to create a government where the states have power. They don't want to create a government where there is a strong ruler telling people what to do. They don't want a government that's going to be very large. For instance, the people who live in Georgia want to make their own laws. They say, we have problems that are specific to us. We want to be involved in our own government. We don't really care what the people say in Massachusetts or even Virginia are doing with themselves. We want to make our own laws. We want to be responsible for our own taxes. We want to be involved in our own government. So they set up really 13 separate governments where the states have all the power and make their own laws. This turns out to create a lot of problems for them that we should be familiar with from class. Problems with the Articles of Confederation. There is no national government. No national, no central government making laws for everybody. States are all responsible for doing their own thing. So, some of the problems they have that we talked about, Congress has no power to collect taxes. Colonists and the new Americans are very big on that. We don't want to create a government that's going to tax us too heavily. We didn't like that when the king did it, so our new government, it's not going to be able to do that. There's going to be a government, no executive branch, meaning we don't want a king. We don't want any leader to be too powerful. So under the Articles of Confederation, there is no president. For the first years of our country, we did not have a president because we were concerned that giving somebody too much power would create something similar to the government that we had under the king, and we did not want to do that. Also, they made the articles very difficult to change. All 13 states had to agree to a change. 9 out of the 13 needed to agree to make a law. The states were not getting along at this time. They were very different. So it's very difficult once they made this Articles of Confederation to change it at all. And even when they did make laws, the government had no power to enforce them from state to state because the states had the power. Now, if we look at this cartoon, and the EOC is very big on using political cartoons like this, we would have to interpret it. We would see the Articles of Confederation and we would say to ourselves, what is this supposed to be? What is this boat supposed to be? Why is the Articles of Confederation set up as a sail? And we would want to come to the conclusion that the boat is really the country. The boat itself is the United States. What makes the sailboat go? are the sales. So what's making the United States go? The Articles of Confederation. And the caption says, rough sailing ahead with a question mark, meaning that that boat is probably headed for trouble. And why is it headed for trouble? Well, we see the little waves coming up. We see a lot of the weaknesses that we just looked at with the Articles. No power to enforce its laws. No power to collect taxes. We could put one in there that said no president. We could put something in there that says too hard to change. States all had to agree. These are more than just one or two little things. These are major weaknesses of the Articles, and the cartoon shows them as waves that we see are soon going to overtake this boat. So the idea is that the Articles of Confederation and the problems that it created are going to be the downfall of our country at that time. Shays' Rebellion is one of the key causes that forces the Americans to change the Articles of Confederation. It happens in Massachusetts, but in the other states as well, the citizens are getting angry with their new governments. The governments are taxing them high. The government is not doing what it said it would do for the citizens. There are soldiers who are not being paid because the government is having difficulty collecting on their taxes. The states are not getting along with each other. And Shays' Rebellion and a number of other things happen around the same time that show the Americans we need to have a change in our government. And Shays' Rebellion really gets all these men to meet here in the Constitutional Convention. Now remember, they originally go to Philadelphia in 1787 with the plan of changing the Articles of Confederation, of fixing them. Not many of the states want to give up their power. They don't consider making major changes, but when these guys get together in 1787, Ben Franklin in the middle, their idea is the Articles are too bad. There's too many weaknesses. We can't even fix this document. We have to get rid of it and create a new constitution. And they do, and it is the one we are familiar with today, the one that starts "We the people of the United States" in order to form a more perfect union. That's your preamble. Some of you still have to memorize it and recite it. But that's where it comes from this. So for the first few years of our country, we do not have the original we do not have the Constitution we have today. We have our first Constitution, which is called the Articles of Confederation, which this Constitution got rid of. So as we discussed in class, and we should be familiar with this, one of the main concerns during this convention is how will it be determined how many representatives a state gets in voting in the new country. Under the Articles of Confederation, every state received one vote. No matter what, if you were a state, you received a vote. Some of the larger states are very concerned about this and don't like this system. They say this is a democracy. We should go with majority rule. If many more people live in our state and they're voting one way, our state should have more of a say than just one vote. If twice or 3 or 4 times as many people live in Virginia as do New Jersey, we should have 3 or 4 times as many votes as New Jersey does. So, something called the Virginia Plan is proposed, which says voting should be based on a state's population. The New Jersey Plan is saying no. Each state should have the same amount of votes. You'll remember the examples we looked at in class about homerooms and going over, is it fair for each homeroom to receive a vote? Or do we want to say homerooms should receive more than one vote if they have many more students in that homeroom? We should do what that class wants to do because more students are in there. It's an easy way to look at this and understand it, but this is a very important issue that will come up and we will talk about from time to time. The Virginia Plan and the New Jersey Plan. Virginia based on the state's population. New Jersey based on equality. Each state gets the same amount of votes. So there is a compromise. They reach the Great Compromise, and what happens is They create a legislative branch or a Congress with two houses. The people from New Jersey are made happy because one house of the Congress is called the Senate. And in the Senate, no matter how many people live in your state, you will send two senators to the Senate. The House of Representatives, on the other hand, will make the Virginia plan people happy, the larger states happy, because it says the more people that live in your state, the more votes you will get. So the Senate is based on equality, the New Jersey system, where each state gets the same amount of votes. The House of Representatives, based on the Virginia plan, the larger your state is, or the more people who live in your state, the more votes you will get. This is the compromise that works, and in a later chapter we'll be more closely looking at the Senate and the House, but for this point in time, all we need to know, the Senate is equal, all states send the same amount, the House is different based on population. And it's going to be helpful for us to consider here what a strong central government is. A strong central government, because on the Articles of Confederation you have state governments. You have a confederation where the states all individually are in charge. Now we have the idea that we should have a strong central government that's going to take power away from the states. It's going to make laws that will apply for every state. This government will be responsible for taxing citizens, collecting those taxes, using those taxes to provide for a military, creating laws that are going to be the same in all the states for the country. So now the Constitution needs to be ratified. This is a vocabulary word of ours that we should just pay a bit of attention to. We'll see it in various different ways. Ratify, to ratification, the ratification process, ratified. So it means to approve of something. The Constitution needs to be passed and accepted by all the states before it can be made official. The people that would be for the Constitution in this ratification debate are called the Federalists. We've talked about them in class, and the people that are against the Constitution are the Anti-Federalists. But we should know the Federalists were for it because they wanted this powerful national government, this strong central government that could make laws for the entire country and not be worried about what all 13 states were doing differently. The papers that they wrote to convince people of ratification are called the Federalist Papers. These are similar in some ways to Common Sense. The document Common Sense convinced the colonists that it was time to unite and go against the king. Federalist Papers tried to convince the Americans that the Constitution needed to be ratified, that the changes they were making to this government was necessary for its survival. The Anti-Federalists are opposed to the Constitution because they like for states to have more power. They don't want to go with a government similar to what the king had. Also, they say this document does not have a Bill of Rights. The Constitution, as written by the Federalists, did not specifically say you have the right to freedom of speech. You have the right to free press. You have the right to worship whatever religion you choose. You have the right not to have soldiers live in your home. And the Anti-Federalists are saying if you're giving a ruler so much power as you're doing, because now we would have a president, if you're creating a strong national government, you need to, in that same document, specifically list important rights that the government cannot take away from its people. So they said you needed to add this Bill of Rights to it, and that was a compromise that the Federalists were willing to make to have the Constitution ratified. So a good EOC point to remember is that the Anti-Federalists were responsible for a Bill of Rights being added to the Constitution, and that one of their concerns was it took power away from the states. So that concludes our review class. Still not feeling great about the way these lessons are going, but I hope they're helpful to people, and I'll continue to try and improve what I'm doing here, okay? So fantastic, great, you're all going to be prepared. This will help you for the quiz on Monday, and will also help you for the test next week, which I will soon have a study guide up for. Thanks a lot for paying attention here.